at the highest level, this is a scandal about covering up Joe Biden's mental decline and being told, don't believe your eyes, even though our eyes told us the guy was needing the Easter bunny to get him out of the White House. But you had, and I think it's going to turn out to be a cabal. It's going to be a group of people, and it's unclear who makes what decision at what time, or whether they even know whether any of them have talked to the president when a go order has been get there. And then you get to, so those are two really big things. Who really was in charge, decision by decision. And you learn from the House Oversight Report that the aides don't have their story straight. It's not really clear. But there's a group of people, Rossetti, the chief of staff, sometimes Mrs. Biden and her team. And there are a lot of people calling the shots, but the president is clearly not calling the shots. Then you have to ask this last question. When you have this much chaos and there is no control in the White House, and you have a White House that's on the way out the door, once Kamala Harris bumps Joe Biden off the ticket, everyone in that White House is looking for a job. And you have to start to wonder yourself, do they start making decisions not because the president told them so, but because someone that they might want to have a relationship with outside of Congress afterwards this is a great way to grease the wheels. It just leaves a really unseemly look at how a White House may have been run for 6 or 7 months at the end. And none of it seems to be in compliance with the law. I think that's one of the most important things the House Oversight Committee makes clear.
All right, guys, good day to you. We're over the hump, already cruising into the weekend. I'm going to tell you, we are almost at 600 episodes of this show. Today may be one of the ones that will blow your mind. And I have, if you're a longtime watcher, I don't ever say that. John Solomon's about to join us to blow the lid off of these Biden pardons and executive orders and what it could mean going forward. This report that the House Oversight Committee issued and referred to the Department of Justice is not getting any legacy media attention. Today, we dive into it like no one else will. I'm telling you, sit down and get ready to have your mind blown. Before John gets on, as I said, the government is still shut down. Day 29, no real end in sight. The SNAP benefits are coming up in a couple days. I think that's where Democrats are going to get real wobbly. But Trump, as I mentioned, in Asia, he continued his trip, landed in South Korea, and what a greeting he got. Take a look at this. This is probably the first time I've ever seen something like this happen when a president landed. All right. You get the point there, but that's the first time that I don't think the president of the United States has ever been greeted by the YMCA when they land in another country, greeting the dignitaries there as he gets off Air Force One. That just shows it's so, even the other countries are in on it. Like, they get it. You don't have to go through all the pomp and circumstance. Have fun with this guy. He wants to have fun. He's dancing, when he landed in Malaysia. Anyway, he did also became the first American president to receive South Korea's highest honor. That was cool. They have gone over and above. This trip just shows what a change in diplomacy we have in the relationships that he's building. Malaysia, South Korea, Japan, and obviously it's careening into this big meeting with President Xi of China, which at least indications are that this is going to be a big win for the United States. We'll see. But the president also made some comments about how different this administration is and how it's going to do business. Take a listen to this.
My administration has rejected the old model of incompetent government that punished success and rewarded failure and made building anything almost impossible. When you come into our country, and many of you are doing that, but when you come into America, you're going to get service like you've never seen before. Quick permits, and we want safety, we want great environmental, we want everything good, but it's going to go quickly. We're rewarding those who build and create and hire and invest in the USA, and we're making America the best place on earth to do business.
That's such that's a guy, that's a businessman that gets it. We're going to make this place a priority to do business in. That'll create jobs, create investment, help with our economy. That's the kind of priority we need right now. And he's getting results, as I've told you, throughout this Asia trip. Unbelievable. And I'm telling you, sit down, get ready, because this John Solomon interview is going to blow your mind. Quick reminder, tomorrow, an amazing panel discussion with Emily Sturge, Amber Duke, and Chris Salcedo, my old buddy, used to work with on Newsmax, and Michael Knowles on Friday. He just testified in front of the Senate. He's going to break it all down for us on our Friday show. Before I get into John Solomon, though, one, thanks again for everybody that continues to subscribe across platforms. If you watch on the video, go to the audio, Apple and Spotify, sign up there. If you're an audio person that likes to listen on Apple, subscribe to YouTube. But again, it helps the growth of the show and always gives you a backup, and that's what's important. So thank you for doing that. All right, real quickly, a lot of important people, a lot of important organizations in D.C. At the top of my list, Concerned Women for America, folks. These guys are at the forefront of our culture war. And if you have kids, or you're an aunt or a godparent, and you talk to young kids today, you know everything that they get hit with. And Concerned Women for America have been leading the culture war for decades, 45 years they've been at this. And they have got chapters throughout the country, so many things that they do. They're led by Penny Nance, who's been on the show before. Great work that they do. They've got 7 core issues that they focus on: family sanctity of life, religious liberty, parental choice in education, fighting sexual exploitation, national sovereignty, and support for Israel. And if you think about those categories, they're getting big wins in each one of them. I would love for you to do me a favor. Help support their growth, their chapters in the different states, the work that they do in D.C. legislatively to do that. And I'm telling you, you talk to people who influences folks on our side in particular. Penny Nance and Concerned Women for America do an amazing job. If you contribute $20 or more to Concerned Women for America, you're not just going to help them grow, but you actually get a huge bonus. You get Penny's brand new book called A Woman's Guide, 7 Rules for Success in Business and Life. It's a great read, but it's also a great gift to give a young woman in your life who wants to understand those guiding principles and how they're important in their life. So just go to concernedwomen.org/Spicer, concernedwomen.org/Spicer. You get your copy today and you help an important group grow. All right. Before I bring in John Solomon, I'm looking over here. You know where I'm going. I'm getting my Beam Dream Powder. Last night, before I went to bed, like I do every night, 1 scoop in a glass of water, 30 seconds in the microwave. 30 minutes later, head hits the pillow, and I'm out like a light. I wake up feeling ready to go. No grogginess. It's all natural. Reishi, apigen, L-theanine, melatonin, magnesium. I'm not kidding you guys. It has completely been a game changer in terms of sleep. And sleep is at the foundation of everything you do. You don't get a good night's sleep. It doesn't matter how you're eating or whether you're working out a lot, because your body's not getting the recharged the way it should be. So I've made Beam's Dream Powder an absolute staple in my life every single night. And when I do miss it, and I will admit that I do, I can tell. And that's the thing. I get asked all the time, do you really take it? I really take it every single night. So Beam is giving all of you the ultimate Patriot discount. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer, shopbeam.com/Spicer for 40% off. Use code word Spicer at checkout. I'm telling you, it'll be a huge game changer. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in my good friend from Just the News, Mr. John Solomon. John, welcome back to the show. Always great to have you.
Yeah, great to be with you, Sean.
All right, you always bring it, so I'm excited. The House Republican Oversight Committee, led by James Comer, announcing this bombshell report into Biden's mental health. What's so interesting about it is sort of it looked at his people and his actions. What were your big takeaways from this report?
Yeah, one of them is an insider's takeaway, but it speaks volumes once people understand the significance. So the staff secretary, as you know, Sean, because you worked in the White House, one of the most important advisors to the president. They're around the president all day long. You see President Trump's staff secretary, Will Harf, he's in every camera shot when he's signing something, because that's the guy that makes sure that the president really has approved something and then directs it to where it needs to go and then preserves it for history at the National Archives. Well, Joe Biden's last staff secretary told the committee that she would not see Joe Biden for the 6 to 8 weeks at a time. In other words, she had no contact. And when the paper was coming to her, allegedly being approved by Joe Biden, she had no idea if Joe Biden really approved it or signed it himself, or why someone or who had even authorized the Autopen to be used in his absence. That tells you that Joe Biden was AWOL from the White House. It tells you that the staff around him really didn't know when they were being told he approved this, whether he truly approved it. It tells us that there was a cover-up going on inside the Biden White House, that the mental decline of the president made him incapable of doing what we've seen every other president in history do, And I think that underlies the whole conclusions that James Comer put out yesterday. The president did have mental decline. His staff covered it up. They were told that he shouldn't use Autopens for pardons. He did anyways. There was a policy that said he shouldn't do it. They did it anyways. And at the end, Joe Biden outsourced decisions that were not his to outsource. He wasn't allowed to transfer his authority to other people. And as a result of that panoply of evidence, they made a referral to the Justice Department on two things. One, was there a criminal cover-up of President Biden's mental decline that kept the American people and the institutions of government in the dark inappropriately? Two, did the doctor who treated him, Dr. O'Connor, engage in that, and should he ever be allowed to treat another patient again? And three, that the pardons and executive actions signed by Autopen at the end of the Biden presidency should be considered invalid. Now, the report is not specific on that, but I got James Comer last night in a detailed interview, and he said that he believes every Autopen pardon in most of the Autopen executive orders in the final months of the Biden presidency are legally invalid. And he called on my show, he called on Pam Bondi to invalidate all of them. That is a big ask, a big demand of Congress. It tells you, he said, listen, we handled this on a silver platter to Pam Bondi. She better deliver. And so that interview occurred about 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday. By 7 o'clock last night, Pam Bondi has confirmed that she has opened an investigation on this matter and that she expects accountability to come from it. So in just a 24-hour period, we got all the news. We got some specificity about what should happen to the pardons. And then Pam Bondi reacted and said, I'm in, game on. And so I think that's where we are this morning.
You know, I have so many questions, but I will say this. The thing about your show and why I love having you on here is that when you say we got it all, like we didn't, meaning you cover it, you do it. I talk to you, and so I can help echo what you guys do at Just the News. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it's funny. I didn't see this on NBC. I didn't see it on ABC. I mean, it is amazing. It blows my mind. So, but let's just back up because I could go down the media rabbit hole for a long time.
Yeah.
But I want to underscore what you said. The staff secretary, in this case right now in Trump's, you're right. Every time we see one of the executive orders, Will Scharf's standing there, Mr. President, this executive order does this. You've directed us to do this. And we see the signature real time. So we know he knows what he's doing. We see his signature affixed to it, whatever.
Yeah.
But what you just explained is critical for people to understand. The staff secretary is the conductor in the White House. Papers move to the president. They need to know the flow. When the president signs them, to your point, who do they need to go to now to execute them? But there is a paper trail. Their responsibility is to make sure that they document that in every way, shape, or form. The president reads an article. They document that so that it's there for posterity. Yeah. When you're saying that the 6 to 8 weeks the staff secretary hadn't seen him, that's mind-blowing. But here's the question that comes to mind. Yep. Somebody was running that train. Yeah. Somebody was saying, this is signed. This is his order. Who was that person?
It's unclear from the testimony. Lots of contradictions. When you read the report, and we're at the mercy of the report's summary of testimonies, we don't have all of the transcribed interviews. It's really unclear who is in charge. Now, the chief of staff clearly has got a lot of the go orders, but sometimes things aren't coming from him. They're coming from other directions. And here may be the most fascinating thing in the report. One of the men presiding over the pardon discussions at the end of the presidency in December and January is a convicted felon. He just happens to also be the president's son, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, a man who was taking money from foreigners to gain influence in the Obama-Biden White House in the 2016, a man who had to admit that he cheated on his taxes or didn't pay his taxes and that he engaged in gun violations, a man who himself is going to get one of those pardons, is presiding over the pardon meetings. That raises a whole lot of questions, including, could there have been a pay-to-play scheme for pardons, right? You just have to wonder, because we know there was pay-to-play scheme on foreign policy in the Obama White House in the Joe Biden world. So you see in this report a whole bunch of areas where the Justice Department and FBI could go next to try to find out. No, I don't have any reason to suspect it other than Hunter Biden did it in the past. So we should at least ask the question in the present. Did other aides who were signing off on the pardons, because Joe Biden admits he didn't review all the pardons, right? He told that to the New York Times. Were other aides potentially getting rewarded with jobs after the administration these are some pretty serious questions. And just knowing that Hunter Biden was in the room when he was a non-governmental employee, wasn't really a person inside the White House cleared on the American payroll. That raises some really serious questions for James Comer. He brought it up in the show last night.
I don't understand, though. I honestly, though, at some point, the chief of staff, and I know there's this group around Biden, Anita Dunn, Steve Ricchetti, others that have been with him forever. They're sort of the nucleus of the Biden trust. I don't call it the brain trust because I'm not really sure there was a brain. But doesn't that concern, I mean, like the idea that somebody that Oz, I mean, this is truly Weekend at Bernie's. They're propping a guy up
Weekend
and
at
agreeing
Biden's.
to,
The Weekend at Biden's. That's what
Weekend
it is.
at Biden's. And I think we just named the show today. But honestly, like this is the biggest cover up. I don't mean to be hyperbolic, John, but you've been covering investigating issues for decades.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything bigger than basically saying, oh, guess what? For at least a couple of years, maybe 3, maybe 4, that there was a man behind the curtain running this country that we're not certain of. Like, how is that not the biggest story in history right now?
It should be. We made Hollywood movies about this scenario. The movie Dave, remember, about accidental president, was stand-in for a fake president who had died. They kept it quiet. Listen, there are some very serious concerns. At the highest level, this is a scandal about covering up Joe Biden's mental decline and being told, don't believe your eyes, even though our eyes told us the guy was needing the Easter money to get him out of the White House. But you had, and I think it's going to turn out to be a cabal. It's going to be a group of people, and it's unclear who makes what decision at what time, or whether they even know whether any of them have talked to the president when a go order has been get there. And then you get to, so those are 2 really big things. Who really was in charge, decision by decision. And you learn from the House Oversight Report that the aides don't have their story straight. It's not really clear. But there's a group of people, Ricchetti, the chief of staff, sometimes Mrs. Biden and her team. And there are a lot of people calling the shots, but the president is clearly not calling the shots. Then you have to ask this last question. When you have this much chaos and there is no control in the White House, and you have a White House that's on the way out the door, once Kamala Harris bumps Joe Biden off the ticket, everyone in that White House is looking for a job. And you have to start to wonder yourself, do they start making decisions not because the president told them so, but because someone that they might want to have a relationship with outside of Congress afterwards this is a great way to grease the wheels. It just leaves a really unseemly look at how a White House may have been run for 6 or 7 months at the end. And none of it seems to be in compliance with the law. I think that's one of the most important things the House Oversight Committee makes clear. They didn't follow the Justice Department rule. They didn't follow the Obama precedent. And they didn't, in some cases, comply with just basic stuff. And people were doing things without knowing whether the president truly had authorized it.
This is, I honestly, I had read a little of the report, but as you describe it, this is probably the biggest bombshell I've ever heard. The idea that the government was being run by a cabal of people. Yeah. John, when you say that Attorney General Pam Bondi has said that there will be accountability, give us a sense of what that could or what you're hearing might look like.
So I think there are 4 areas they're going to look at. One is, do you negate pardons and executive orders because they didn't follow the law and the guidance of the Justice Department? That's a big one, not for the people who have pardons who might lose them. It's a big one for posterity's sake that Joe Biden didn't actually run the presidency well enough to keep his orders in place. And so that's number 1. Bucket 2 is there some prosecution or some action that the Justice Department recommends against his doctor? The White House doctor obviously still has a patient of one, the president, but the White House doctor in history has been the public's doctor, assuring us and making us know whether a president is in trouble, like when President Reagan was shot in the hospital, or is he healthy, like we're told often after physicals. That is a second area of accountability. The third area of accountability is, did anyone in these conflicting stories give false testimony now or in earlier congressional proceedings that is prosecutable because it was part of a cover-up? It was, let's hide Joe Biden's demise, and if we have to lie about it, we will. And then I think the last one is people who had very specific legal responsibilities in the White House when they executed an executive order, when they executed a military decision, or when they executed a pardon, did they follow the law or did they commit a crime by knowingly and willfully not following the law? Those are the 4 buckets that are in Pam Bondi's purview right now. She promises accountability. I'm sure she'll apply the law. I'm sure she'll stick to the evidence, and we'll get outcomes in all 4 of those buckets probably in the next 6 months.
So there's 2 things that I think are important. One, you mentioned the pardons, and 2, the executive orders.
Yeah.
From your analysis, are they different in how they approach? Meaning, I feel like the pardon might be harder because as long as President Biden is still cognizant enough to say, yeah, I meant to give Hunter a pardon,
right.
that might be a little bit harder because all he has to do is publicly say, yeah, I did actually sign off on that.
Yeah.
And you'd have
to say. In the case of Hunter Biden, he did hand sign it, unlike a lot of the Autopen. So Hunter Biden's pardon is one of the few that are hand signed.
Okay. But on the other ones, there's a question that I've heard lawyers bring up that said, hey, the pardon power is absolute.
Yeah.
Right. And so the question then I would argue is, if he didn't know, then it's not absolute because only the president can do it. And if you could prove that he didn't know, but is there any chatter that that's going to, I mean, what the tactic is there, right? Is it to prove that he didn't know? Or
so here's one of the things that's going to be hard. Joe Biden saying it now when he's not the president is not an affirmation that he executed the pardon policy. In addition, Joe Biden's interview with the New York Times gives us a baseline admission that he didn't review some of the pardons. And I think that Joe Biden has been famous for putting his shoe in his mouth all over his 50-year career. But that New York Times interview could be very, very damning. It could be an explicitly important piece of evidence for history, but also for criminality or for making decisions on pardons. If Joe Biden made that statement and it can be proved that there's not a dispute that he made it, then the Justice Department will have to go back and say, Joe Biden said this. He can't tell us now he pardoned someone. He doesn't have the power. If there is no documentation showing that Joe Biden reviewed and approved a specific pardon, then we're going to have to declare them null and void because that's what the process says you must do. The pardon says you must approve and you have to show approval. And Autopen is not approval given the way that it was done. We now know that the people who executed the pardons on the Autopen said they didn't know if they didn't even talk to President Biden. They can't prove. They're not a prima facie witness that said Joe Biden approved this pardon. So they're going to go pardon by pardon. If there's not documentation showing that Joe Biden approved a pardon, then I think you're going to see the Justice Department err on these are null and void. Now, another thing that's important is that Joe Biden showed conscious intent when he signed Hunter Biden's pardon. He knew that that was important enough to personally sign it himself. How did that happen? Did Hunter Biden take it to him? Did the lawyers get in the room? Why did he get in the room for that one, but not the other pardons? Why did he follow the law for a personal family member, but not others? That can become very dispositive as the Justice Department makes decisions on whether to negate an action or not.
And you have it through your sourcing that this is the Department of Justice under the leadership of Pam Bondi is definitely going down this.
She said it on the record on Twitter or on X last night that I have opened an inquiry. There's lots of new information that I want to thank James Comer for, and it will result in accountability. Those are the 3 statements she made on the record. And in my reporting, I understand that some of this began before the report began. The Justice Department began ramping up this review. Comer has enhanced that with the report because there's a lot of new evidence, sworn depositions or sworn interviews and emails that we didn't know about. But I get the sense that Justice was already working in this direction. Maybe 6 weeks ago they began. So that's what my reporting indicates. She confirms that last night, but the Comer thing now fills in a lot of blanks that saves time for the Justice Department. And she says there'll be accountability. I'm going to take her at her word right now.
On the executive order front, it seems like that might be a little bit easier to prove in the sense that if there's no paper trail showing that he executed it, you could say it was null and void.
Yep. And there's another thing that is precedent setting for presidents. Almost every executive order that I have ever seen issued by a president comes with a proclamation or statement. I, the president, just executed this, and I want you to know why I did it. Donald Trump does it every day in the 200-300 executive orders that he has now signed. there is and by the way, Joe Biden did it at the beginning of his presidency, but there are a lot of executive orders that we now have learned about that were executed from May of 24 to January of 25, where there isn't that accompanying Joe Biden says, I did this because, and that may be a sign that the stoppage of that may be a sign that he has checked out and that he really wasn't making the detailed approvals and explanations for decisions. And this is going to become a sticky wicket. If justice negates them, then it's going to get challenged. It's going to go through the courts. And like so many things in Washington today, it's probably going to be settled by the 9 justices of the United States.
So interesting that you said that, because I would have agreed with you 100% that that it would get challenged. But is there a glimmer of hope, not of hope, but of reality that you're Team Biden and you say, I don't want to challenge this because when we go down, let's just play this out for a second. You're Jeff Zients, the second chief of staff.
Yep.
And you go, guys, I don't want us to challenge this because when they open up this can of worms and realize that I was the puppet master, it's going to be a bigger problem. So maybe we just say nothing and let this go. Is that, I mean, I got to imagine that's to some degree a possibility, because when we were having the beginning part of this discussion, you said we still don't know. I think they want to hide what really happened.
That is a strong possibility. Also, keep in mind, most of Joe Biden's executive orders have already been reversed by executive orders of Donald Trump, so it may be moot for executive orders. Where it will become really important is people who believe they're pardoned and may have to go back to prison, or people who were facing the death penalty and don't any longer, and now they're going to face the death penalty again. Someone is going to challenge that, and that, because for some people it is a life and death matter, and that is where we may also learn where there's special deals. Hey, I'm the lawyer. I spent some money here. I talked to this person who told me they would get me the pardon. That's where Pardon Gate 2.0. Remember, we had Pardon Gate 1.0 with Bill Clinton at the end in early 2000. We may have another Pardon Gate when we start to learn, and Pardon Gate could be pay to play, maybe if it's in its worst scenario. But let's suppose it's something less nefarious, which is, hey, I never talked to the president. No one ever told me what the president was thinking on this. This guy just said, I'll make the decision and take care of it for you. And that's where we may finally get witnesses in the pardon who said, I never talked to the president. The president never told me he approved it. This guy did, or that woman did, or this person did. And that's where we may figure out who was really running the White House. It may actually be beneficial for history's sake to go down this path.
I agree. You know what's funny, though? You mentioned the staff secretary not seeing him for weeks on end. KJP, former press secretary, and Jen Psaki both say, well, we never saw any of this decline. I think the bigger, broader issue here is how many of these people, cabinet members, et cetera, that really never actually had interactions with the president of the United States. I tell people all the time, I probably talked to Donald Trump 10 times easily by noon on any given day.
Yep.
And yet I think that many of these people who vouched for his mental and physical acuity never actually saw him for quite long periods of time.
There's a great anecdote beyond Nara Tandon, who's the staff secretary, which we've talked about, 6 to 8 weeks gap in between seeing the president when you're the paper shuffler for him. Pretty extraordinary. Remember Ian Sams? He was on TV every day telling us impeachment's bad, Hunter Biden's innocent, he didn't do anything. He said he only met the president twice in his entire tenure at the White House. One of the most important spokesmen on one of the most consequential issues for a president, impeachment, and he only saw the president a couple times. You start to get pieced together from what is sometimes contradictory evidence, but sometimes not, that Joe Biden just wasn't in the office. He wasn't working very hard. And that's why people weren't seeing him. They were in the office. He wasn't. And that raises the question, who was pulling his strings?
Unbelievable. Speaking of the Department of Justice, you guys had this report at Just the News that the Ohio Secretary of State had referred more than 1,200 criminal cases to. Yeah, okay, so just you do it because it's your reporting, your exclusive reporting at Just the News. Tell us what we need to know about this referral, because when I read your story, I was like, again, blown away. Mostly because the media tells you that none of this stuff ever exists.
That's
I'm
right.
not giving it away because I want you to tell everyone, what is this referral about and how big of a deal is it?
Well, let's start with the narrative that isn't true, that people don't register when they're non-citizens, and non-citizens never vote in elections. because that has been disproven over and over and over again. 2 years ago, the Secretary of State of Texas found 12,000 non-citizens who had made it onto the voter rolls. The Texas improved their election integrity with voter ID. They thought that they had a really clean 2024 election, but Texas took advantage of a new database that Donald Trump made available and the Homeland Security Department made available that allows you to make sure someone's a citizen or not. And when they compared their pretty clean voter rolls by standards of other states, they found 2,700 people whose name, address, and identity matched a non-citizen who had gotten on the voter roll, and as many as 130 of them looks like they voted. That's a large number of non-citizens voting in an election, and a super large number of people getting in position to vote when the system is pretty good in Texas. Imagine what it could be in California where the system's not good. There's not voter ID. Then just a few days after that announcement, the second state comes forward that also used the SAVE database. That is the state of Ohio. And its Secretary of State comes forward, Frank LaRose, and says, in the last 24 hours, we have found over 1,000 people in our state, which, by the way, also has Ohio has very good voter identity and voter registration rules, much stricter than California or New York or Illinois. We found over 1,200 people that may have illegally registered or illegally voted, including 100 or so people that were non-citizens who appeared to have voted, and some people who are citizens but voted twice in 2 locations. I'm not wasting the time to send that back to Democratic county prosecutors who Democrat might turn their blind eye, not do it. I'm going to send them all to the Public Integrity Unit, which oversees voter integrity in the Trump Justice Department, and we're going to have the feds prosecute these people. That is one of the largest single one-day referrals of potential criminal activity I've ever seen covering election integrity in my life. 1,000 people, more than 1,000 people identified in a single day by the Secretary of State of a state to the government. Now, on the flip side of this, we just happen to have Harmeet Dillon on our television show as this was going down. She's the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and she oversees election integrity, civil rights, and civil liberty protections. And she says, listen, we are going to begin punishing states who are not keeping these voter rolls. If you knowingly and willfully don't clean up your voter roll, you knowingly willfully create a situation where illegal aliens or non-citizens who are lawfully in the country but not legal to vote get on, we are going to start to punish you. That may mean lawsuits, it may be prosecutions, it may mean pulling your federal funding, which could cripple some of these states going forward. This has been a big week for election integrity. And one of the things that Harmeet told us is that there are 8 states now that have gotten letters from her saying, you're in danger of grave penalty. Clean it up quick or you're going to be penalized. I think you're going to start to see those penalties in the next couple of weeks.
Let me guess, the 8 states are all run by Democrats?
I think it's a pretty good guess that is true.
All right. Well, I want to stick with this DOJ type of thing because you guys have done a lot of reporting on what they call Arctic frost. Okay, there you go. I can tell you're teed up.
I love that story.
Okay, so let's walk down this. What is Arctic frost? Why were Republican members of Congress being investigated, and where is this going now?
Yeah, so I've covered the FBI for about 35 years, and I've probably read a lot of predicated memos of investigations that I got under FOIA or would get in a court case later through discovery. Arctic frost is one of the most oddly predicated investigations I've ever seen. It's up there with Russia collusion. And in many ways, it mirrors the effort to give the veneer of a criminal investigation to something that really has a political motive or a political beginning to it. Arctic frost is started more than 15 months after January 6th, but it is purportedly a criminal case about January 6th. And the January 6th case originally started with, people pierced the Capitol, they raided the Capitol, they rioted at the Capitol, we're going to punish all the people. But somewhere along the line, someone came up with the idea in Congress and in the Justice Department and inside the FBI that they ought to treat what Donald Trump supporters did in trying to get alternate electors. Some people call them fake electors, fraudulent electors. We'll use all 3 terms. you pick the one you want, to the Senate before the Senate voted on January 6, 2021. Now, waiting 15 months for that is really odd. Waiting that long after a criminal case, after an alleged criminal act, to begin opening a case when, in fact, all the facts were out and open the day it was going on, right? Why did you wait 15 months? Well, let's put it on a timeline. This case is opened just a couple days after Donald Trump announces he's going to run for re-election again in 2024. He's back in the game. By the way, his polling numbers are coming up at this point too, because Joe Biden has had such an abysmal start to his presidency with the open borders, the Afghan failure. So the Democratic establishment realizes, oh my God, we thought we killed Donald Trump after 20. He's back. And then all of a sudden, beyond the cases that they were legitimately prosecuting of people who assaulted officers or trespassed into the Capitol, they're going to look at MAGA Inc. and Donald Trump as a criminal conspiracy to put fake, fraudulent ballots into the counting process on January 6, 2021. Now, there's a lot of things about this, and until last night, I never got the opening electronic communication from the FBI, but I got it. We're going to make it public in the next 24 hours. You're going to get it first on your show today. It is a memo that is 15 months into the crime, alleged crime, and it uses words like Donald Trump's campaign. We have evidence suggesting Donald Trump's campaign may be involved. Some of its suggestions come from CNN articles, not exactly the greatest evidence in the world, news articles. 15 months in, shouldn't you have testimony and records and emails? Nope, they're using CNN articles to predicate this case. But the single most glaring thing about this memo is it criminalizes the act. It says that this clearly violates federal law. Now, all you have to do is type into Google, if you're an FBI agent, the words alternate electors, and you very quickly will get a history lesson. There were 2 prior times in American history where alternate electors, or if you want to use the more nefarious terms, fraudulent electors or fake electors, were injected into the system. The first was 1876, the election of 1876, where the losing candidate, Tilden, actually submitted to Congress fake electors, alternate electors, fraudulent electors from South Carolina. And it was made as a decision not to prosecute in any way the people involved in that, because the determination was Americans have a right to redress their grievances before Congress. So the act of submitting those electors, fake, fraudulent, or alternate, was never prosecuted in 1876. And then in 1960, during the Kennedy election, when Hawaii was uncertain, at a moment when Nixon was still in the vote count lead in Hawaii, 2 sets of electors were offered, one for Kennedy, one for Nixon, and Congress accepted both of them. Clearly, one of those 2 electors were fake, right, or alternate, because you can't have 2 people win the state. And then weeks later, the Congress picked Kennedy over Nixon as the vote counting kept changing. And Nixon lost his lead and Kennedy got the lead. And then they used one of the 2 alternate electors and made them the legitimate electors. Again, no one was prosecuted for that act. The FBI memo is completely silent on that historical lesson. And that's very unusual when you have a political crime, a crime that is emanated in a political dispute, not to go back and look at how was the law applied and are we applying the law fairly and evenly. This memo is void of that entire discussion. Rather, it just uses CNN articles and suggestions to open up a criminal case. And the breadth of what they're opening up on is a shotgun blast. Most predicated criminal referrals or opening of cases involve a narrow group of people. We believe the evidence suggests or shows that this person did this with these 4 people, and this is the crime. This predicating memo is a shotgun spray a mile wide. We're going to look at the president and vice president, Pence and Trump. We're going to look at 160 Republicans of all different ilk and type. We're going to look at 8 senators, 1 House member, even though they were doing their constitutional duties that day. And we're going to look at 92 conservative groups. That is not a carefully predicated, narrow, evidence-based thing. It is a fishing expedition. You're sticking your line in the water, and you have all the names you want, and then you'll try to find the crime for each of them. This is a very unusual predicated memo. We're going to make it public tomorrow so the whole world can see. But I think it's troubling. It follows like what happened in Russia collusion. At the end of the day, Russia collusion was a political dirty trick and really a political opposition research project that came from Hillary Clinton and then was given to the FBI to give legitimacy. In what we believe Arctic Frost will ultimately turn out to be, based on the early evidence, is the Democrats in Congress, the Democratic deep staters in the National Archives, and the Democrats in the Justice Department and the FBI had a political opposition theory. They wanted to put a line in the water, and they legitimized it, and they went fishing under the powers of the FBI and the DOJ. And John, you'll say, John, that's an overreach. Prove to me that anyone was anti-Trump. The agent who works this case, Tim Debo, openly posted anti-Trump sentiments on his social media case. He's one of the guys at the start of this case. He's involved running it. He's the guy talking to the Biden White House and to the Biden archives. So yes, an anti-Trump person was involved in the instigation and carrying out of this early case. And some of the early evidence doesn't come from witnesses. It comes from Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, two Democrats who are pretty clearly overtly anti-Donald Trump. So yes, it does have a lot of the similarities of weaponizing an FBI system with political Democratic talking points or opposition research or wants and wishes. And it doesn't follow the normal process of an FBI predicating a very narrow case based on evidence. It's based on suggestions and CNN articles and the wants of the Democratic world.
All right. So is anyone going to be held accountable on this front? I mean, like whether it's Liz Cheney or Benny Thompson or anyone in the FBI? Because, I mean, this agent, this is, again, another mind-blowing thing, that the idea that you're using CNN reporting 15 months afterwards to go after 160 people and groups on the right.
Yeah, and some of them in the predication memos and in the early documents, there's no description of what crime they committed. They just said, oh, this guy did this for Trump, or this worked for this in this capacity. Right. It's a fishing line. It's unlike anything I've seen. Well, the answer to your question, Sean, goes back to what we just talked about at the beginning of the show. Remember, January 6th committee members got pardons. And so the first thing is, are those valid pardons? Because if they are, then...
But now it makes sense.
It's all tied together.
Oh my gosh, the dots are connecting, John Solomon. I'm like, wait a second. Maybe they were like, this wasn't out of, it was funny. At the time, everyone kept saying, why did they need them? Why did they need them? But if in the back of their mind, they were thinking ahead, did we just answer the question? That's why they needed them.
It is a very important question. The dots are connected. Now we need to see if anything that anyone did was criminal. And there's a lot of questions to be asked, right? Was any incentive given to January 6 witnesses to change their stories? We know some witnesses changed their stories, right? Were there any gathering phone records that would have violated our civil liberties, so they did an end run around it? One of the questions I have is, how did Congress get all these 30 million lines of data that I was able to break a couple of weeks ago? Where did that data come from? Did it come by subpoena? Did it come from the National Archives? Did it come from phone companies? Was some of it volunteered? And when Congress gave it, did they just hand it to the FBI rather than make the FBI go through a court-approved search warrant or a grand jury-approved subpoena? These are really important questions, and it takes us back to a very important person we just talked about. Harmeet Dillon has said on my show, if someone knowingly and willfully violated someone's civil liberties, we're going to treat that as a crime, not as a civil matter. So a lot of what these dots are connecting now, we're going to have to go back and say, did these actions rise to criminality? And we don't know the answer yet, but I know from my own reporting what Harmeet is doing, what Pam Bondi is doing, what Kash Patel is doing, what Dan Bongino is doing. The wheels of justice are now turning towards answering, did some of these actions arise to crime? And then do the pardons apply to people who are able to get pardons, like an Adam Schiff or a Liz Cheney, to be determined. But it is all tied together in one big soup bowl.
Will you indulge me real quickly?
Sure.
Do you have any update on either Brennan? I know this is separate because they were gone, but Brennan or Comey, you guys at Just the News have always been like at the forefront of where this is. Is there any updates on Comey or Brennan? Because I've heard that there's some issue coming now about that there was actually a lot. The media tried to play down the Comey prosecution, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm hearing that's not true. There's a lot more to that.
Yeah, I'm working hard to get my hands on these records that will show the evidence that underlies the indictment. As you know, the indictment was pretty thin. It was pretty sparse. It just said he lied about authorizing the leak of a story We've learned in follow-up that it involves Clinton, something I said on day one, and Dan Richmond. That's all we know. But there is two bodies of evidence. One is evidence that was solely gathered before a grand jury, so it can't be unsealed until a court unseals it. But we are taking actions to try to get the grand jury materials, which we believe may involve text messages and emails that would show who did what in the course of this leak, which apparently involves Hillary Clinton's email case and Dan Richmond. That's what the early court filings show. The second part is a body of evidence that's classified. Now, that tells you something pretty important, which is that this case involves classified materials. Now, I'm not saying the leak was classified, but to solve the case and to show what James Comey did or didn't do, and Dan Richmond did or didn't do, or the other people did and didn't do, you're going to have to declassify some information. And I'm working to get that information declassified as well. But remember what happened with John Bolton. The first couple stories from the legacy lame media were, oh, he's a victim. He's a victim. This is retribution. It's only about the book. And then, oh, the search warrant returns came out. It's like, oh, wait a second. He had classified information about WMD. And then you stop seeing the stories about poor John Bolton being a victim. It was, oh my God, a former national security advisor was forwarding classified evidence to his email where it got intercepted by enemies, and some of it involved WMD. The John Bolton is a victim story went away very quickly because the facts showed that this was, it looks to be a merited prosecution based on evidence, not on persecution or retribution. I think based on my reporting, we're going to see a similar outcome for Comey. Now, Brennan is still under investigation. Grand juries are looking at that information. There's a question about his 2023 testimony and him saying, I never wanted the Steele dossier in the intelligence assessment that accused Russia of helping Donald Trump. We now have emails showing he ordered it. So there's a big conflict there. Does that rise to criminality? We'll find out soon. But I would expect what we would learn about Brennan in the next several weeks. I think we're going to start to learn Comey. And I think the first revelations about Comey might not come in the court case. It might come in a transmission of new evidence to one of the judiciary committees or one of the intel committees. And I think we should be looking at Congress to be the first, perhaps, provider of some bombshell evidence on Comey.
Well, this is a reminder to everybody. If you're hearing about all this stuff and going, I haven't heard about it before, then you need to follow John Solomon and follow Just the News, because this is what these guys do day in and day out. And I honestly, it's, to me, you are the only guy, and Just the News is the only place that actually reports this stuff in a comprehensive, understandable way. So thanks for what you guys are doing. I love having you on. I know that's why I'm saying I can't have you on every day. I mean, I'd love to. And so that's why go follow John Solomon, follow Just the News, because you're not going to get this information from any other news source than them. So thank you for coming on. As always, John, you're so generous with your time.
I love your show, buddy.
And I appreciate what you guys do.
Thanks, man. Good to be with you.
You bet.
Thanks.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. Please make sure you join us tomorrow for the great panel discussion. Michael knows on Friday. Go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up for my free newsletter. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.